water safety in Vietnam, and they will present us the collective results of international drowning prevention efforts in Vietnam.
So I figure that if Justin can take his tie off at mid-morning, I can get rid of at least a little bit of this structure. Do you want to stand up and sit down again? Quickly do it. Up and down, but don't leave the room. So please sit down, and thank you very much for staying. When Joanne and I realised we had what we call the graveyard shift, we thought, how can we make this a little bit more interesting? Because we've seen a lot of people speaking behind lecterns and using PowerPoint. So hopefully you'll find this a little bit, you'll find it more than a little bit, but hopefully you'll find this interesting. We're going to be talking to you today about a collaborative, because we've been in Vietnam for many years. Joe has been there for more than 10, and I've been there for more than 5. But it was only, we've shared resources and we've done the things that you would expect us to do, but it's only been this year when, or the Penang conference actually, so that's 2 years ago now, when we met up with another organisation called Golden West, and we, can we go back to those logos for a minute? And so a very enthusiastic Ms. Beth Kreidel actually suggested we should be joining together in a more collaborative way and a more formal way. So we looked at who was currently operating out of Vietnam that shared philosophies with us, because that's very important. And we looked to Swim Vietnam, to Hue Help, some of you may know Graham Buckley, Water Safety Vietnam, which is the organisation, small charity that I represent, Swim for Life Vietnam, which is a branch of Golden West, and another very small project but very important project called the Awesome Project. That's the Australian water safety on the Mekong. So they are a small project from Western Australia, in Australia, of course. So joining forces has been a little problematic, but Joe will talk more about that later. The background is that we're all over in Vietnam because of the awareness that we had from various reports that the drowning rate in Vietnam was horrific. 2011 there was a formal report that said that there were 10 per day, but other organisations were telling us it was up to 32 per day, unofficially. That just shocks Australians anyway out of their socks. So we actually found that fundraising was fairly simple once we started to put those stats in front of people's faces. As someone said this morning, we have such a great lifestyle in developed countries, we just don't understand how this can be so. The conference in Penang really focused our attention on what should be included in our courses, and we're not going to go into that in detail today because you've heard that for the last 2 days. So much of what we do is similar to what you're doing in other countries. We work with local authorities because that's absolutely essential, as you've heard from previous speakers and other speakers in other sessions. We are absolutely adamant that we're not there to teach children to swim or to be safe. We talk about training trainers. So when we're there for the very first time, we might have to have a bit of a show and tell and run a children's program so the parents get to be confident as to what we mean by a swim program. Because in Vietnam, the parents didn't know what we meant by a swim program. So they were very keen to know what we were going to do with their children. We either locate, build or import swimming facilities appropriate to each area. And in my case, we just didn't have any clean water. And I had all swim teachers that were not too keen about swimming in dirty water. So we actually located swimming pools in resorts that were very much underutilised. And we had management, Joe did too, in Hoi An. We had management of those resorts very, very keen to assist us with clean water. We use survival swimming programs, and we absolutely include swimming, water safety education and CPR. We open our CPR sessions up to the public. We teach very young children. A girl yesterday from Bangladesh was talking about teaching very young children CPR, 7-year-olds, and we find they're really, really keen and they retain what they've been taught. Bringing along the families, making these evening sessions actually meant that far more people ended up being aware of that knowledge. And of course, we're working in schools. Joe will talk more about that. Collectively, well, let me go back to that conference in Penang, because I have to really mark that as a marking point. We flounder around in our own little organisations. We do really well, and we go and report that to our sponsors. But in fact, at that conference in Penang, I got a bit of a wake-up call, because I was told very clearly by the researchers that we were not going to make a difference. We were not going to make a difference unless we could collaborate, unless we could get the government on board and do this on a mass scale. Vietnam has a population of 93 million and growing. If anybody uses the population clock, the app, it will probably have gone up as I said that sentence. So that is a huge number, and coming from a country like Australia, that was something that I had to get my head around, and then I had to get other people's heads around. We're talking about a huge number of children. The stats you can read for yourself. The benefits of working together, they're very obvious. We've always shared, but having to do this now in a more formal way even matters more. We've got some working out to do. We've got to decide, in fact, what that pass rate is, because we're now we're putting our stats together, and therefore we've got to be sure that we're counting the old apples with apples and not apples with pears. So we need to do some work on that. Obviously, opportunities for our trained Vietnamese teachers to work with each other's organisations is great. Our capacity building for our local staff is that as well. And we can look together at our risk management approaches and see that they're sound. If I could flip back to those stats, there's just something that I'd like to point out. We are working with schools now to just have a classroom-based course. This month alone, in one province in Vietnam, they're targeting 72,000 children, grade 3 and 4, Kev? 3 and 4, 4 and 5?
Second group.
Sorry?
2 through 5.
2 to 5. So they're able to reach 72,000 children in such a short time. Now, working just in the pool, there's just no way we could even make a small impression and get half that number in. So the courses that are running in the schools now, and this was started by Jo and her organisation, her team, is really proving to be beneficial in my mind. We're going to take some questions at the end, so we'll pass to Jo.
Thank you. So that's some of the benefits of working together, and the benefits are definitely huge. But it must be said that working in collaboration is not all sunshine and roses. I mean, there's definitely downsides as well that you've got to learn to cope with. It takes more time for decision making, so you have to work that in. You need somebody to lead, which involves people stepping back for a while. And we're talking about people that have been leading individual organisations for quite some time. There's personalities and egos involved, one of which is mine. I would have said I was a very collaborative person. Turns out, I'm not. But the opportunities for forward momentum that we have in a very, very good positive direction, which might not be exactly the direction that you had anticipated, it really, really outweighs any of the negatives. So here's some of the facilities. Some of us only work in pools. So in Vietnam, my organisation are only in pools at the moment. Some organisations work in open water. So this is a great opportunity for one of our organisations, Hui Help, which really specialises in open water, can start to train other of our organisations to really meet the needs in rural areas, because that is where it is on a national level going to be most important. So training teachers, some of us train to international standard using OSWIM, some use IFSTA, some use a modified version, which is similar to national standards but meets rural specific requirements. But it's all very similar. Okay. So again, we'll just kind of pass over the swimming programs. We're all the same, survival swimming, focused on water safety, all very similar stuff. So Pam touched on water safety education. This is classroom-based water safety education. And this is something that some of us have started to do on a much broader scale. And this is an advantage of collaboration, which Pam didn't mention before. It vastly increases your connections within the community and within particularly the drowning prevention community. When we decided to start to, of the possibility to roll this out on a larger level and possibly on a national level, because of these connections through the collaboration, we were able to get advice on the quality of this presentation from Royal Lifesaving Australia Education Department, from Dr. Linda Kwan, from Dr. Aminir Rahman, people that I personally would not have been able to reach without the benefit of the collaboration. It's a huge advantage. And so 110,000 children have already had this education, 70,000 more before the end of the year. And these greater numbers, as I spoke of in yesterday's presentation, means that we now have data which can be used for research and analysis on the effectiveness of this classroom-based education. So I'll just skip past that one as well. Costs. So what about the future? As part of a collaboration, and we are still all individual organisations, but just working together. And there's strength in numbers, so as the collaboration, we can speak with one voice. With this one voice, we've provided the Vietnamese national government with a suggested national curriculum and suggested teacher training. And they may or may not take this on, they may modify it. But we will be able to work together to ensure that we are able to support them in whichever route they go down. And there's a lot of momentum in Vietnam at the moment. It's a really interesting time. The government really does see, there's a great momentum that the government wants to make changes and solve this drowning problem. It's fantastic that Bloomberg Philanthropies are taking an interest in the country. And as a collaboration, we want to be able to work with the government with their forward momentum as it continues and they start to implement their survival swimming programs and water safety education, hopefully nationwide. So that's it for me. If you've got any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, girls. Any questions from the room?
Does the one voice have a name, or the collaboration of more organisations?
We're still the INGO collaborative. We're working on that. That's a really good question.
And what about the employment outcomes for the teachers?
For me, our teachers are actually...
Can you tell us what the question is? We can't hear.
Sorry, so employment outcomes for the teachers involved?
So do you mean are they working for us as volunteers, or are they employed by the organisation?
When the locals get trained,
Yeah.
do they have...
When the locals get trained, when we train local teachers, what are their employment outcomes? So for me, for my organisation, we're actually training PE students at 3 universities. So I targeted 3 universities that had a PE department and then approached them and said, can we bring in swimming, the AusSwim course, as part of your curriculum? We do it for free, so of course they said yes. So that's gone on now, that's 5 years of doing that. So that's an awful lot of PE teachers that have gone out with an AusSwim qualification. With the provinces now that I'm working with, I'm actually targeting the PE teachers that are in schools, and we're having sessions for 35 primary school PE teachers. They are already employed. The other one is lifeguards at resorts. Unfortunately, some of them don't teach, they lifeguard.
Any more questions?
Can I just ask a little bit more on that one?
What we try and do is nearly all of our teachers who are qualified work within the Swim Vietnam programme, but over the longer term, what we're trying to do is, the term is socialise the programme. So whereas at the moment we pretty much pay for everything for all our 8 pools, we're trying to, over the long term, hand them over to the government so that the government starts to pay the salaries. It falls within the education system. We've just started doing that with limited success. It's been a little bit disappointing in this first year, but we kind of felt, well, let's allow them, and this was the local managers that said, do it this way, allow them to make the mistakes, allow the education department to figure out what they're doing wrong, and then we can go in and advise them, and then hopefully do a better job next year.
Any more? That's the last one. Let's give them a good